G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic Monday and a fantastic start to your week. Now, as always, we have a lot to go over. We're going to start at the maps as there's been a lot of map movements, geolocated footage, and some interesting bits we need to then look at. We're going to look at some strikes, and then we'll of course talk about Crimea, more strikes into there from Ukraine, as well as some things that have been hit, potentially intercepted, and some claims there as well, and a terror attack that has happened in Russia. Now, today is 1 year since Wagner PMC had a rebellion back into then Russia. And we have a look at a couple of photographs here. I like these boys with takeaway fucking brews and some dude in a cowboy hat, of which I don't know if he found it or what, but that was a big point in this war, and seeing that rebel back against Russia. You know, a lot of people claimed very early that we would see then a Russian societal collapse, that's the way the war would end, from losses, then people would start rising up against the Kremlin. We haven't seen that yet. There's been a lot of claims that would have happened very early. We haven't seen it. Is it still on the cards? Oh, what happens in the future of this war? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I haven't come to a conclusion yet about how this war ends. So I try and report on what's happening on the day. I know a lot of other bloggers have this is how the war is going to end. And I think that does skew how they see certain bits and pieces. Now, let's have a look straight off the bat at the maps. Now, of course, here is Ukraine, the center, the capital of Kiev. The red areas occupied since 22, the purple since 2014. The green is area where Russia has been and has either been pushed back or has withdrawn. Some cases, bit of column A, bit of column B. Now, of course, this is Crimea down here. You'll have to know that for a little bit later. But we are seeing some interesting bits and pieces on this map, and we'll look at some geolocations. So look, let's actually start maybe a little bit backwards from where we are. So we'll come down Kyiv or Robotyne front. Now, we know this hasn't actually been moving down here. Now, I've done a video specific, I think it'll be out tomorrow morning my time, so 12 hours from whenever you're seeing this, about the situation with these three Russians moving down this road. One is struck by a drone, and then the third man here, at the request of the middle guy, injured, then I guess takes him out, we will say. But an interesting bit of the maps is what I want to look at is where the geolocation was actually of this. Now, this is actually geolocated to here. So you see your Robotyne, then you have this like double dogleg road here happening then on this tree line. Now, let's actually have a look at where this is. Well, this is right up here. So this is showing more than 2.5 kilometers away from where the deep state map actually says where the Russian line is. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that it should be red up to here, but we do know that there are guys operating up here being hit by drones, as well as other Ukrainian maps showing that the majority of Robotyne has come under control of then the Russian forces. So I thought that was then interesting to look at. Now, I want to move up just along the south here, nothing on Vuhledar, but then we see a major shift on what I'm calling then the Vuhledar front. And this is major considering of what we've seen the movement over the past, say, 12 months. In one direction, 5 Ks, and up and down, we're talking 4. Of course, it's not a square, but you get an idea of how much has actually then shifted here. Now, let's have a look then yesterday at where the movement was just above. So we see Solidoki here. So let's have a look. So we see yesterday and then through to today. So there is a lot of movement happening in here. And like we've spoken, this road through here is very important for supply from Vuhledar to Vuhledar and these areas. So that is very interesting of that movement here. And this is then backed up, not only showing Russian movement on the Ukrainian map, then we have then the Syriac map showing this same. So this was that first one we looked at here. So we know that definitely shifted. This is just up in here. And then we show this second shift in this corner down here as well. So we can see where Mikilsky is down in here, as well as this closing up. Now, one thing I will say is the deep state Ukrainian map itself shows more territory than the Syriac map. See where this paddock is on the angle? This is this paddock here. So we'll go by on this map that Russia's actually got more ground than Syriac is showing in there. That is a very interesting front, pushing on lots of small front lines in multiple locations. Now, let's just move up the map a little bit more. Then we'll come into Krasnohivka. No changes shown then on this map, but let's have a look then. We'll come onto the Syriac. Now, he's just showing a small movement up one of these roads in here by the Russian forces. We know this is full on urban fighting in here. We will expect this to move very slowly of any changes up and down through this front. Now, let's move north a little bit more. Then we come into Avdiivka, and we see then 3 areas with some significant changes as well. Given the amount of work and the amount of assets in here, any movement is still significant. Nothing around the Ulmansk-Netelyovo front, although we do have on one of these maps something shown in here. This is on Suryak. He's showing more of a close-in next to Yaspodanivka. So right in here showing that this is closing up. Again, what I've spoken about is these open grounds in here is going to be difficult to take unless you envelope it, but it's also going to be then difficult to defend or withdraw out of here. It may be interesting to see what happens over the next coming days or weeks on this front line, then creeping forward. But you can see in 3 areas, or 4 if you want to include this, that this is then pushing forwards, putting, of course, pressure on these 3 open territories we have here. And as up in the north here, more of then a push out, of course, where we've talked about for about a week now, is Russia trying to get to this intersection, because this intersection here and these roads, these play all a major play into areas like Konstantinivka in here, of course, the supply down in areas in this New York front, as we will call it. That if Russia can get to this intersection from guys who are talking to me on the ground, this would have a real effect on this front. Is it going to collapse everything? No. Will it have an effect? Yes. So we should see that they are pushing out in this direction. Let's have a look then. Suryak, and Suryak then backs up this exact movement in this area. So we know that's happening, as well as some of the other movements down near Sokil as well. Russian army took full control of the town of this. In addition, Russian forces advanced in Sokil and entered the first houses of Yevhenivka, so pushing up further down into these fronts as well. So we know there is a lot of changes on this. Now, I know a lot of people are expecting, one major push. In attritional war doctrine, you push on a lot of major fronts in small areas to stay within that bubble of influence of your electronic warfare, your fires assets, your artillery, all of this, and small areas trying to plug holes. And what you're trying to do to your enemy, whoever you're fighting, is imagine you're in a boat and you've got 10 leaks and you can put a finger in each one. You try and open up an 11th leak, so you have to pull from somewhere to put your finger in that one, and then you open a 12th, and it's very difficult. I don't know if that makes sense of an analogy, but that is, I guess, what you're trying to do is open up, so your enemy's constantly running, trying to plug holes, and you just have little movements in multiple front lines. Now let's come into this area here. Now, no change actually shown on this map today, this Toretsk, New York front, but we do know over the past couple of days, Russia did make some ground in here, opening up then a new axes. Now, nothing shown on here, but let's have a look on then the Suryak map and show, because we did say yesterday the deep state actually shows more territory in here than Suryak's map did. Now we come in here. Now this is looking more similar today, getting into then these first blocks here. Russian army took control of the cemetery of Pivnevchi and adjacent trenches, thus reaching the first houses of this town from the south. So this is an area I think we need to really, really keep our eye on and see what happens up in here. Could be very interesting, as well as this is sitting right between Avdiivka and Chasiv Yar. Speaking of Chasiv Yar, no changes in here. We know there's a lot of fighting, but not much movement on then the maps that we look over. Now, Rozdalivka, let's have a look here. Nothing then shown then on this map, but there is some geolocated footage that we need to then have a look at here. So this is Rozdalivka as this red dot in here, and we can see just in these first blocks, right about where my cursor is here, we have seen video footage of Russians putting up then a flag. I'll show you that footage in a second, advancing the locality. So we know that the red should be up into here somewhere, not shown on this map. So if we get an idea of where then this road legs out, so just then in here, I'll show you then this footage geolocated. So I'm sure this will update at some point. See these Russians move out from here and then run out, put up their flag, and then run back inside. Now, that said, people go, run out, put it up, but we do know that they are operating in here, in areas which may not actually be shown even as grey zone. There no changes through Berhovka, Crimea, and then we come up into the north. No real changes shown anywhere on this map, but what we did just talk about yesterday was there was a change shown in this Sinkivka-Vilshana front that wasn't backed up by anything. Then we see then Suryak has shown two movements, aka these two movements here. So we can confirm that Russia did have an advancement here across multiple sources, and that is what we like to see, at least for the mapping, is multiple different maps lining up and showing then similar movements. Now, Vovchansk and the Hlebok front, no changes on any of these as well. We spoke about yesterday what exactly is happening here, and again, it's actually very difficult to know exactly what's happening here and what the overall outcome that the Russians or the Ukrainians actually want here. What are they willing to pour in to either push further or hold this area, say Russia or Ukraine? What assets are you willing to free up from other areas on the front to put into here to then push back then the Russians at this attritional aspect of war? And I still am firmly believing that Russia never wanted to take Kharkiv. There was never enough troops or armor actually cross here. But now what we're seeing with that is we are seeing other areas on the front line, down in Vuhledar, down in Avdiivka in the south and the east, then starting to move more and more day to day. And in this war, regardless of if Ukraine or Russia is taking a lot of ground, I don't think we're going to see at one point like 15K is taken in a day. It will just be this slight chipping away, because in a war like this, it's too dangerous to move outside of that bubble of influence of your electronic warfare, your drones, and your artillery. And of course, the drones have short range, especially due to EW, which is prevalent both ways. But then the artillery doesn't want to be right on the line either. So you stay within that and will only ever see a few kilometers at a time. And we could see, if there is a big advancement forward and you start coming out of that bubble of influence, areas then getting cut off, worth just that creep forward. I think Ukraine, if they can launch another major offensive maybe next year, that we will see very similar to this. But of course, the winter in Ukraine and how you can fight in winter with armor and artillery and light infantry troops does shorten the ability for more of this. It'll be interesting to see how this goes and looks then into the future. So let's have a look at a couple of strikes here. Then we'll talk then about Crimea. So I don't have a geolocation for this, but it was said by Ukraine that the armed forces of Ukraine successfully hit a command post of a Russian motorized unit in Belgorod region. We then have video footage of this being struck here. Now, again, I actually don't know exactly what has hit this either because of this. Is it back into Russia? But we do know that a number of Western weapons, basically all of them now, can actually be used inside of Russia. Some of those restrictions haven't been in place. We know, say, the Patriots, there we see the strike. So the Patriots, that although people assumed that the Patriots couldn't be used against planes inside Russia, that they could actually have been used the whole time if those planes were looking to shoot into Ukraine. Now, let's have a look at a couple of other things. We've seen more of the FABs being dropped. We've also seen a lot of Russian pages talking about the FAB 3000s, some of the misses that are happening, and some of the problems, and are multiple smaller bombs a better option. Now, the FAB 3000s, my little take on this would be, if they're running the same size like wings, well, it's physics. You're not going to have the amount of steering and control on those control surfaces for the amount of bang. But we have seen number 3 and 4 be dropped in what we presume is still testing. So we see that this is probably the target of this building down here. We see then a FAB 3000 dropped there. Fighter bomber put that one up. And again, what I will say is, yeah, maybe missed dead on, but a 3-ton bomb doesn't need to be that accurate. As well as then we see another one here. Again, we don't know exactly what the target was going for here. This is said to be up in Lipsy and Kharkiv as well. Then another 3,000 kilogram bomb here. And you can see just the devastation of some of these areas then after the bomb, which is something we haven't really seen much of. But what they're pointing to is, are you better off dropping more like 4-500s? Now, the reason I show this, it's interesting. We don't see that many of these down in the Kherson Oblast. We see more of it around the east, but a hell of a lot up around Kharkiv at the moment. But these are dropping actually on the right bank as well. So you see this footage here of then 4 of the FAB 500. So that's 2, and then 3rd, and then 4th there, striking. And you can see that these are significantly more accurate. And a lot of people are pointing out you're far better off actually dropping, say, 4 of those than one larger bomb. So that it's just interesting to look at new weapons that are entering the battlefield, and Ukraine is going to have a difficult time, and they are having a very difficult time countering these. They can't hit the bomb. They need to hit the plane in the air. we do know Russia has they do have a lot of air defense, but they also have a lot of targets they need to protect. They need to protect areas in Kyiv that have all the command areas. They need to protect critical infrastructure. They need to protect where the F-16s are going. That you can't just have air defense everywhere, but you need to strike that plane in then the sky. So let's have a look at some other strikes as well. Of course, we saw one of those bombs hit in Kharkiv itself. I can't show you the footage. It'll be on the Telegram. But of course, a bomb in the center of Kharkiv here, residential area, drop, and major amounts of damage there. Now, let's talk then about Crimea, some strikes, some claims, all of this. So we have seen that Ukraine launched major ATACMS strikes against Crimea last night and through the day. So you can see these are ATACMS here, then launching off multiple of these multi-launch rocket systems up into the air. And then another round here going up. Now, what have these hit? What are some of the claims? Well, let's go about here. The full result of the attacks is not really known yet, but we do have a worrying video of a cluster going off in the vicinity of a beach. Now, one thing I'll say with this is it's not completely clear from the footage if this was caused from a Russian interception of these ATACMS or not, but you can see how this is being used straight away. So again, I don't know if I can show you this. It'll be on the Telegram, but you can see people at the beach, just people hanging out, and you can hear then the clusters going off in the background. Now, people saying, well, why would you holiday on a beach in a war zone? That for civilians, it doesn't, I'm not saying it's a good idea, but civilians are civilians regardless of their background, whether they're in Gaza, whether it's in Israel, whether they're in Ukraine, whether they're in Russia. And civilians need to be protected, and also military items should never be around heavily populated civilian areas. But there is a lot of claims about this, and what we do know, and the Russian pages are pointing to, is we know that American aircraft were in the air at the time firing an American weapon, and we know there is absolutely a link there between helping that targeting too. But this is what then the Russian MOD has said at 12:15. Deliberate terrorist missile attack was carried out from the city of Sevastopol by 5 American ATACMS operational tactical missiles equipped with cluster warheads. While repelling a missile attack, the air defense forces on duty, 4 American ATACMS were intercepted. The explosion of a fragmentation warhead of the 5th American missile led to numerous casualties among civilians in Sevastopol. That's the video footage we're getting out. All flight missions for the American ATACMS operational tactical missiles are ended by American specialists based on own US satellite reconnaissance data. Therefore, responsibility for the deliberate attack basically falls on then America. So what we can take away from this, regardless of how you see it, whether this footage we have of the clusters going off, or we can hear the clusters going off, the missile was never meant to hit there, but it was intercepted and it's happened. We've seen that. We've seen missiles that are going for a military target be intercepted, and this is both by Ukrainian AD and Russian AD, and then go into an area and kill civilians. I'm actually getting my international lawyer friend on to talk about what happens in that case. How is that then seen? But one thing we can take away from this is, regardless of where you see, that Russia has intercepted some of these ATACMS. Now, let's just assume that Russia has intercepted some, regardless of how you see it. Now, this would be expected by now. It's about 6 to 8 weeks after a new weapon system then enters the battlefield. We then see the countermeasures improve on that system, especially GPS guided systems. And what I've raised before as a concern of these systems is, okay, a lot of these are going in, Russia's building its ability to counter these, but there's not like an on-flowing onwards attack following these strikes. It's not like these strikes are going in, wearing out the AD, and then we're seeing a crossing of the Dnipro or going down. So what my concern and what I bring up as I think about is, without that, are we just is Ukraine limiting the effectiveness of these into the future? And if and when there is a time for that attack, these won't be as effective as they were now. Are some of these weapon systems better off holding off until you have then follow-up attacks? So say the F-16s come in and you want to take down the Kerch Strait Bridge, that you wait on the ATACMS, not to let Russia be able to actually, because each one that's coming in against S-300, S-400, they build up a log of how they work, and it improves how they can then counter them. So in the beginning is shocking and it gets better and better. Same with the EW, same with the GPS. We've seen this with other then systems of which you don't now see on the front lines. So what I'm saying is, well, there's some bit of holding these back. Once the F-16's right, we're taking down the bridge, then fire them in, take out the AD, and then the next day come in, take out the bridge or launch an attack. That are you wearing down one of the systems, and without that follow-up, is it not having the full effect of what it could be? I don't know. I'm not a general. I don't operate ATACMS. That's just piecing together pieces that I've seen on the front. Now, another strike is said to be then against in here, in this location. Let's zoom out. This is in Crimea as well, against then this thing over here. Now, these are basically large satellite dishes. Now, I'm unsure how important this actually is to the war or not. So we can see this footage here of massive amounts of fires out here, but really this isn't showing us that much. We know there's fires, but we don't know exactly what has been hit, damaged, or destroyed yet. But it's said to be this thing, the Vuhledar Space Communications Center down in Crimea. Now, this is a very old system, and let's look at some bits of information that I have found on this. The target, which was struck by tonight's Ukrainian ballistic missile in the northwestern Crimea, utilised 8 long-range variants of ATACMS, appearing to have been against the Soviet NIP-16 Space Tracking Deep Space Communications Center in the city of Yevpatova and the coast of the Black Sea. The site was abandoned after the fall of the USSR, so at the beginning of the 90s, was abandoned until the Russian annexation in 2014, when it was placed under command of the Russian Aerospace Defense Force and Nuclear Early Warning and Command Operations. Now, what I'll say with this system, like the Early Warning and Command Operations, again, the weapon systems we're seeing used, I don't know, people saying like this will cripple Russia's ability to do things. I don't see how much this would actually, something like this would actually be used. Some are saying that this is basically abandoned anyway. So I did a bit of a look on what this actually then is. Now, thanks to the location, high mountains facing the Black Sea north, little radio interference and beautiful climate, the Crimean Peninsula is a perfect location for critical ground control facility of the dawn of the space era for this. So it was built then a long time ago. That this was equipped to be a deep space radio station. So communicating with spacecraft beyond the Earth's orbit with then some of these lunar probes back in the 50s, or late 50s, early 60s. So could maintain contact with spacecraft up to 300 million kilometers. Such a capability would be enough to guide missions beyond the orbit of Mars. So it depends who you look at. Is this being used, or will it have any effect? Same as some of the other early warning systems that we've seen struck, where people go, okay, the way it looks isn't actually having much effect. But again, we don't know. We know that the US has a lot to do, same as the UK, with like your Storm Shadow, your ATACMS as well. I can't see being wasted of some of these strikes against something that isn't being used. But again, unsure. We will see if or what damage has been caused to this system. But we do know that ATACMS are looking like then they are still getting through. Now, we need to have a look at this terror attack, and I'm not fully over this, and it's not really relevant to this war. I know people will draw conclusions, and you see the celebrating of an attack in Russia against just people anyway, which is just disgustingly uneducated, same as what we saw in the Crocus circus as well. But let's have a look. So I can't show any of the footage, I don't think, but the Russian National Guard is stacking up here to raid an Orthodox church, and this is actually from then the ABC. More than 15 police officers are dead after gunmen opened fire in a synagogue, 2 Orthodox churches, and a police post in Russia's northern Caucasus region of Dagestan on Sunday. There were also civilian casualties. Russia's anti-terrorism committee said in a statement that the Russian Orthodox church priest and police officers were killed by terror attacks. Also, simultaneously, reports appeared an attack on a traffic police post in the capital of the largely Muslim region in here as well. So there's been another attack here as well. And tensions, of course, are very high. From what I've seen, they've got on top of this now and have killed those responsible too. Anyway, legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I hope we got over a bit of everything. Anyway, if you'd like to support me, links down below. Never feel obliged. I like you guys being here. Anyway, have a great day. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.